Thank you very much. Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi nui kia Kurt for setting the kaupapa and the challenge for NDF on the first morning. Ngā mihi nui kia Paula and Anna for your discussions on experimentation and prototyping, setting the path for this, what I'm about to share, and to Dave for the excellent kickoff. Was that just this morning? It seems like such a long time ago. Ko wai au, he Pakeha aho, he Tauiwi, a newcomer aho, he Hurai Jewish aho, nor Poland, nor England, nor Scotland, nor Clan Buchanan, oku tupuna katoa. He Kaiwhakaputa Matehiko, digital experience producer aho, no Te Papa Tongarewa, ko Amos Mann toku ingoa. No reira, toi tu te tiriti, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Around the time we last gathered for National Digital Forum Conference, I was part of the exhibition team for Ngā Taniwha o Rupapa, Dinosaurs of Patagonia at Te Papa. This exhibition is on world tour from MEF, Museum of Paleontology in Trilu, Argentina. Because the landforms of Zealandia and Patagonia were once part of the same supercontinent, and Australia, Gondwana, the Patagonian finds are a rare glimpse of life likely to have also lived here in Aotearoa in those periods. For example, the exhibition included one of the largest dinosaurs known, Patago Titan. For this touring exhibition, Te Papa chose to produce a range of new experiences and include local Aotearoa dinosaur finds and Mātauranga Māori knowledge, aiming to maximise impact for visitors to the exhibition. Sometimes we have to augment or adapt incoming international shows to meet the needs of our local audiences, especially their desire for and expectation of participatory and interactive experiences, reflecting on our understanding of our audiences, or reflecting our understanding of our audiences and what they've come to expect of Te Papa. I'd like to focus on two of the additional experiences produced by Te Papa for the show. They are Create a Dino, a creative interactive experience, and Patago Titan, immersive visual effect. Both had high levels of audience impact. We used two quite different approaches to workflow for each. However, workflows were both highly iterative. Let's treat these two products as case studies for workflow and for impact, and then let's ask why we might choose different types of workflow for different products. And lastly, I'd like to share a vision for what it might take for GLAM sector institutions to more fully support types of workflow that offer the greatest impact potential as a return on investment. This is Te Papa's audience impact model. We use it to set impact goals and to assess impact outcomes. I won't dive into this now, but see the link or see Adrian Kingston, who's here at the conference, and he was key in its development. I think he's going to mention it briefly later this afternoon. These were the initial goals for what became Create a Dino. Goals were to extend visitor time in the exhibition, hold attention for up to 5 minutes, meet the needs and motivations of younger visitors, aged 8 to 12, and their families, prompt visitors to recall some of what they've learned, provide a creative opportunity for visitors, motivate and empower visitors to display what they create. One of the initial points of inspiration for this project was the 2009 Te Papa Interactive Build a Squid, familiar to many, I'm sure. The organisation considered Build a Squid to be highly successful, but by the end of its life, when it was online only, the average session length was less than 10 seconds. So we weren't 100% sure what features of a new builder type of experience would be the most impactful, or if this was the best approach for 8 to 12-year-olds of today. And so we decided to begin with a design sprint as the most efficient for exploration, consolidation, and validation with contributing teams, with audience, and stakeholders. Facilitated by myself and experienced developer Dan Park, our design sprint plan here shows a week's worth of activity, but we spread it out over 2 weeks to allow more flexibility in scheduling, with different groups joining the core group for different steps, you can see along the bottom. Our goal was, by the end of the sprint, to have a prototype concept that meets the story and experience goals within constraints, is validated with stakeholders, contributing teams, and our visitors, and is approved by the organisation for production. But before the sprint, we knew that although it would be an in-house project working with many in-house teams, but including our software team, shout out to Julian and Andrew in the back, we'd need to collaborate with externals for digital design. We ran a procurement process and contracted ClickSuite and Head and Tail for UX, UI design, and asset design and production. And so, importantly, they were fully on board for the design sprint. Our design sprint was very fruitful. There were a number of key findings that allowed for rapid prioritization and decision-making, including a strong understanding of the 4 types of gameplay available to us. This came from convergent analysis of the 50 or so ideas generated in divergent ideation. This analysis allowed for robust discussion with the curators, through which we identified play with the morphology and see the result as being the best fit for the wider learning goals and themes of the exhibition. And this was chosen for some of the same reasons why you might choose to exhibit articulated skeletons in the first place, for the comparative study of morphology. This convergent process allowed us to focus on one concept more fully earlier than anticipated, although I felt it was wise to keep at least one other concept alive a bit longer as a bit of a straw man or for comparison or to draw on creatively at later stages. We then created our first paper prototype to test with 8 to 12-year-olds. This was during the design sprint. We worked with the learning team, and we have a close relationship with a school walking distance from here, Mount Cook School. We learned so much from those kids. We learned that we had a lot of competition from large multinational corporations. We learned about the aesthetics our audience were attracted to and why, what different aesthetics symbolized for this age group. This helped us gain confidence for an illustrative approach that was engaging and attractive for the age group, yet still within scope. We asked, what age group do you think this is for? Here are their responses graphed. They saw it as a good fit for the age group and beyond. They really valued and wanted high levels of customization. That was really important for them, that their personal creation did not end up looking like everybody else's. They valued animated movement. They taught me about Fortnite emotes, dance moves that cost about $5 each in this country. But this wasn't necessarily of highest value to everyone. And humour and irreverence was very important. They wanted accessories, including anachronistic accessories. A surprising number wanted a top hat for their dinosaur. There was much more that we learned from our audience, our greatest teachers. We asked our questions in a way that allowed us to weight the responses in terms of relative importance for audience, and understanding this relative importance helped us balance where we would apply our effort in production. And we continued to test. By the end of the project, we tested 6 product iterations with our audiences, testing concept with Mount Cook School, testing experience, journey and look and feel with visitors, paper prototype UI testing with visitors, front-end software test with visitors, in situ test with preview audience, post-opening research, which we use to prioritize post-opening improvements. The project also had a lot of creative collaboration in iterative design, spatial design, iterative software development, and iterative testing for technology configuration. Here are some of the segments from the flow of the final product. Body type choices, colors, features, markings, patterns, which retained the human hand in some way. It was still about human creativity. Scan the QR code to visit your dino online, and then release your dino into the wild. Engage with your dino on the catwalk and watch it walk off into the distance with the other dinos created. Take a photo with your dino. Over 40,000 dinos were released. 33% of the dinos created were then visited online, and this represents a very high ongoing engagement. My rule of thumb is that if 10% convert to the next step in a journey like this, you're doing something right. So 33% is massive in my books. 36% of the dinos visited online received repeat visits, including through link sharing, and 55% of the dinos visited online were downloaded. These are all very high conversion rates, I believe. Dino's exhibition ran for 3 months, but if we extrapolate out, we can see engagement with Create a Dino at a similar level or exceeding that of Build a Squid. We saw visitors spending 2.5 minutes to 4 minutes or more creating their dino, and then they continued to engage with the dino for another few minutes once it was released onto the big screen, showing it off to their family and friends in a social way. We heard from our host team, some kids even asking if Build a Dino Interactive is available as an app so they can play with it at home. This shows very strong demand. We heard from our learning teams, very clearly a hit. Several of the Mount Cook kids were very excited and happy to see the finished version of the paper prototype they gave feedback on months ago. Here's a partial list of credits for this project, and that was the dino most visited online. The second case study is the Patago Titan immersive visual effect. Rather than an audience-centric workflow, the emphasis here was on iterative creative collaboration. Here's the first concept mock-up I did for this experience using exhibition concept sketches from our spatial designer, Rosie Kwan. It started out as a simple idea to reuse CGI dinosaurs in life-size projection. But one of the first considerations/opportunities was the deep velvet purple color that our spatial designer, Rosie Kwan, had chosen for the walls of this space. I'm not sure if that translates at all to hex code on the projection, but really deep velvety purple. I'm not sure if I can see it in the room, but maybe somebody's wearing the deepest purple. So we would either need to paint a mid-grey rectangle on the purple wall for the projection, or maybe we could make use of the effect that this very dark purple colour would have on the projected image. We needed to experiment and test. Ahead of testing, we undertook a procurement process for this project. We contracted Wairarapa-based digital creative John Strang of the company Dusk. As soon as we had John on board, we set up a prototype testing workshop. We brought together the ingredients, samples of the purple colour, samples of mid-grey to test with also, along with Te Papa lighting team, Mike Slater and David Booth, who brought the gobo lighting design that were designed for the exhibition. Each section had plants from the eras, or that had first appeared in the fossil record from the eras that were being represented. These are the gobo images designed by graphic designers Jin Ambrosia and Nick Clarkson. And along with technology solutions team members Mark Roxburgh and Mark Oliver, we put it all together, and this first prototyping session was highly successful. We learned that the deep purple colour in combination with the gobo lighting effects allowed us to make the rectangular edge of the projection frame disappear. It might not look like it in these snapshots. But this initial prototyping gave us great faith that we had the right ingredients to proceed with further creative development and prototyping, and then we could bring each of the elements back together during installation. But there was one point on the journey where I found myself a little off track. Our media researcher, Jane Dennehy, found some very interesting CGI Patagonian visuals that had been composited onto amazing footage shot on the west coast of the South Island. I started to ask, shouldn't we also aim to represent the dinosaur habitat here? But in discussion with the team, they brought me back around to the original concept. We had an opportunity here to do something quite special with minimalist visual storytelling. It wasn't until we all came back together for the last 3 iterations during the last few days and nights of install that we all started to see the overall effect. It wasn't going to be an experience like watching a movie. As Dan and I worked with John on the movements of the dinos and the simple scenes that would play out, it occurred to me that this was much closer to a kind of giant puppet theatre in terms of the storytelling techniques available to us, of gesture, pacing, relying heavily on audience imagination for what we could hide behind the puppet theatre curtains. And so by having a team of creatives moving forward step by step together, discovering the landscape together, we supported an iterative process that maximized impact. Although our original primary goal was focused on aesthetics and adding a bit of extra movement and interpretation into the space, to our surprise, audience engaged much more deeply. Our host team told us the Patago Titan projection has been a huge hit with kids. We've seen kids pretend to be a dinosaur alongside the projection and try to pet the dinos and even try to feed them their stuffed toys. It's so exciting to see children be so engaged in the museum and get involved with the space. Our internal business stakeholders told us the biggest surprise in the exhibition so far, it's all the chasing and patting and kissing of the Patago Titan projection. The intimacy and connection there is striking. That addition also exemplifies how tight parameters can breed really clever creative solutions. The projection isn't interactive, nor a full immersive experience or environment. And yet it is because visitors make it that way, filling in the gaps with their imaginations. This is a partial credit list for this experience. I've changed to white theme for that. In some ways, the story of any project is a story of risk. But risk is a deceptively simple word. All activity contains risk. All businesses are fueled by risk. There are many positives to risk. Through risk, we reach reward. Teasing out the different kinds of risk involved in producing an audience experience allows us to make better workflow choices. This slide is a simple risk-reward cycle diagram. The emphasis is on mitigations for delivery risks. Those are the risks on our timeline, resourcing, and budgets. With audience impact as the reward, how do we mitigate for the risk of suboptimal outcomes that can even eventuate through successful delivery of a project? How do we mitigate for these reward risks? One way to mitigate for these kinds of impact-reward risks is through choice of workflow. Select a workflow that maximizes opportunity for learning. This way, we can respond to what we learn about what's most impactful as we go and mitigate for impact-reward risks. My general rule is if there's any novel interactivity in a product, then audience-centric iterative workflow is a must. This is because the key ingredient for every interactive product, every interactive is incomplete until you have a first-time user. A naive user is the most vital bit of ingredients for creating an interactive. And so the way we involve that ingredient in our workflow is through iterative user-centric workflow. You get it. How can you build an interactive product without this key ingredient? We need to integrate naive users into our workflow, which means we need an audience-centric iterative workflow for these kinds of products. And this is what we used for Creator Dino to maximize impact. Iterative prototyping in creative collaboration can be the most efficient way to get higher impact outcomes from multidisciplinary creative inputs. This is what we used for Patago Titan visual effect. There are a few different ways of thinking about this distinct kind of creative iterative workflow. One is the quote, "Never come to a meeting without a prototype." This way of thinking can expedite discussion and collaboration in powerful ways, and of course reflects a number of Anna's comments from yesterday. Another way of thinking about this is an axiom from the film industry. A film is born 3 times: on the page, in the shoot, and in the edit. In the film industry, creative change at each iteration can happen because there's a strong common understanding of workflow. Many workflow types rely on an initial strong common understanding of what it will be before production begins. On the other hand, for iterative workflows, it's important not to have a strong common understanding of what it will be. Instead, it's important that we have a strong common understanding of what good iterative workflow looks like. And so here's my attempt to chart different types of production workflow and their attributes. Moving up the y-axis represents greater need for common understanding of creative iterative workflow. Moving along the x-axis from left to right represents moving towards a lower degree of common understanding of what it will be before production begins. Moving out across the arcs represents greater levels of impact potential. Further out, institutions can support greater and greater levels of novel interactivity and greater levels of creative collaboration at higher and higher levels of impact potential. But to support this, it's important that there is a lower degree of common understanding of what it will be. Instead, within institutional decision-making and approvals, these ways of fulfilling institutional needs can be replaced with a higher degree of common understanding of good iterative workflow. My vision is for a business approvals process or a business approval structure where approval sign-offs are focused on the goals and the choice of workflow rather than signing off on the concept for what it will be. What I'm advocating for here is rather than putting quite so much institutional effort into deciding what it will be before beginning production, instead apply that effort towards building stronger common understanding of good iterative workflows, what they are best at achieving in terms of impact, and when to use them. And I hope this paper goes a little way towards this common understanding and a more common appreciation of the gigantic potential for impact that iterative workflows hold. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
Thank you so much, Amos. That was wonderful. I really, really enjoyed that, and I love seeing the dinosaurs. We are unfortunately at time, but hopefully you can find Amos around the tea break in the afternoon.
I love talking about all of this, so...
Thank you again.